ॐ वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्. So in this Bhagavad Gita class, we were discussing the 13th chapter, and in our previous class, we were trying to understand the concepts of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra in the first stanza refers to the body. So Sri Ramakrishna, just in the previous class we discussed, Sri Ramakrishna says, why whatever that exists here, since Sri Krishna says whatever exists can be classified into two. The knower and the known, that is Kshetra, the field, that is Prakriti, and Kshetrajna, the Purusha, according to Sankhya, and one who is the consciousness behind all that is changing. So what changes is kshetra, not the kshetrajna. It remains constant. So that is our individual soul or the supreme soul, whatever you may like to call it. So what is the significance of discussing the kshetra? If the goal is to attain kshetrajna, so Sri Ramakrishna answers, he says, why do devotees look after this body so carefully when it is a mere combination of things that are perishable and it's going to die one day? But he says, just as you don't care for an empty package, there's a box. It becomes valuable only because if there are gems and jewels inside. So because of that, the box is given significance. It's not because of the box itself. So the body by itself is insignificant, no doubt, because it is perishable, like all other things around us. But because of the precious thing, the pure consciousness that can be realized in this body, devotees have to take care of the body, being the temple of the Lord. Sri Ramakrishna also said, and Swamiji says very emphatically, that there are many temples. Animals also have consciousness. So there is that is also a temple of God. But the uh, human body is the Taj Mahal of all temples. That means what he meant was it's a supreme, it's the biggest possible temple that we can understand in Prakriti. The reason being is it is only in the human body that one can realize the kshetra, the kshetrajna. The kshetra is there everywhere, but animals are incapable of realizing that kshetrajna. So all human bodies are treasure chests where Ishvara is the treasure whom we are searching. So now comes verse number 7 to 11. These group of verses will describe how the knowledge, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetrajna has been told. He said whatever is Kshetra was explained, the Prakriti, and whatever is not Kshetra, the only thing that doesn't change is the awareness or the Kshetrajna. Jna means the knower of the Kshetra. So Kshetrajna means one who knows this Kshetra. So there should be a unchanging entity which sees the changing universe around it, and that includes the body also. Now, how to realize the difference, the distinguish, how to distinguish between the kshetra and kshetrajna? That is the point that is being discussed from verse 7 to 11, where Sri Krishna shows that it is not enough to just know theoretically what is kshetra and what is kshetrajna. It is only information. But the intuitive knowledge of the kshetrajna, that is the soul or the spirit, is an outcome of how we lead our lives. So verse 7 to 11 give a list of things that we need to do or we need to practice in our daily lives so that we can have that intuitive knowledge of Kshetrajna. It doesn't depend only on knowing. We may be knowing the difference between the two, but how to intuitively experience or be one with the Kshetrajna. Because to be one with the Kshetra doesn't help us It has a temporary existence, and one day, along with the body and the mind, everything will perish. So there's no point in understanding that. But an intuitive knowledge or a knowledge of the spirit is eternal, because no matter what happens to our body, the intuitive knowledge remains. But the self culture that is involved, how do we discipline? What are the disciplines of the body, of the mind, and of our personality, which are required to get this, to gain this intuitive knowledge? So, first verse, seventh verse is Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam, Shaucham, Sthiryam, Atma Vinigraha. So, this is a verse number 7 which describes the different qualities. Amanitvam means humility. Manitvam means ego. Absence of ego is amanitvam, that is, absence of ego or humility. Adambitvam, one who is not pretentious, unpretentiousness, that can be described. That is the translation. Adambitvam. So, uh, that quality which enables the human personality to practice these two qualities, humility and unpretentiousness, and also ahimsa, non-injury, not just physically but also mentally towards other creatures. Because when we try to harm others or practice himsa, what actually happens is it divides us, it segregates us. We have the feeling that this is me, that is not me. So anything that is not me, I have the right to destroy, or even or whatever it is. The mind also, it's not just at the gross level, but at the subtle level, we make distinction between my ego, my uh, pride and your pride. So that division is not conducive to realizing intuitively the kshetragna. It may give a knowledge of the kshetra because you focus on the body and the gross things, and your even your mind and ego. Even ego is gross. According to Sankhya, Prakriti has everything. It starts with the gross body. It has ego. It has a mind. It is buddhi also is part of the. Uh, but when the buddhi becomes sharper, then you come very near realizing the Kshetragna intuitively. That's why the power of buddhi is known as intuition. You begin your journey by trying to polish up your buddhi to the, uh, I mean, without bothering too much of about the gross objects. But the thing is to focus on the buddhi and to keep a very sharp razor-like intellect which can understand this difference and hold on to the kshetragna or the Atman or the Brahman is difficult. You need these qualities. So ahimsa in a way helps because you try to see the sameness in everyone. That's why you don't hurt others. You're not jealous of others. You don't commit violence, physical or mental. So ahimsa is one more quality which leads to the realization of the kshetragna. Kshanti. Kshanti means forgiveness. So we'll discuss why these qualities are necessary to get an intuitive understanding or awareness of our kshetragna, the true self. Arjavam, that is uprightness, not to have dual standards or not to be hypocritical. Uprightness, you're just upright, you just be what you are. Don't try to pretend what you are not. Acharya Upasanam, service of the teacher, because teacher here doesn't mean the secular teacher, means a teacher who is giving you spiritual knowledge. So whatever service you do, indirectly it enables you to accumulate enough karma to get. It is as good as practicing humility, non-injury, ahimsa, kshanti, forgiving others. Forgiving means you don't make a distinction. We'll see why it leads to an intuitive understanding uh, of the kshetragna. So that is the idea. Now, shaucham, that is purity, physical as well as mental purity. And then we come sthiryam, that is steadiness. This word is also present there in the Kathopanishad, where Yama says, Kaschid dhiraha. Dhira means one who is steady. Steadiness is also sthairya. It has come from dhairya or sthairya. Actually, dhairya is a more appropriate word because it it is steadiness of the intellect. The From the word dhairya has come, whereas dhairya is just steadiness. So when the kshetra becomes steady, when everything is steady, then you see this uh, mm, kshetra as opposed to the kshetra. You see, you realize intuitively the kshetra as opposed to the kshetra, which is constantly in a state of flux. It keeps on changing. So this thairyam is necessary. So that's why we begin with physical steadiness or steadiness, as Patanjali says. Asana comes first. Sthiram Sukham Asana. Sthira, from the sthira word sthira, sthiram has come. So we begin with asana, though you do yama niyama, which is moral discipline, but that is followed by sthirata or sthairya or sthairiam, which is steadiness of the body. But steadiness of body is the first step. Patanjali says after asana, once your body is steady, which is more important because without that you can't have your mind steady. So first steadiness of the body, then steadiness of the mind, and then of course steadiness of the buddhi, which is dhairya, dhira, kaschit dhiraha. Dhira means one who can hold on to his dhi or the awareness, the buddhi. Atma vinigraha, self-control, that is controlling the sense organs from dissipating the energies, because all the stored up energy is necessary. Whatever you can store up through asana, through steadiness, through Atman Vinigraha, you will find that you get a lot of energy for meditation. Otherwise, it will be dissipated or diverted. So, humility, modesty, non injury, forbearance or uprightness, service of the teacher, purity, steadfastness, and self control. So, these are the uh, qualities that in the verse 7. We'll come to verse 8, but humility is particular in this context. It doesn't mean just being humble in our day-to-day life, in our material needs. That is, say you have many possessions and you're just humble about it, you don't boast about it. But it goes to a higher level where a sadhaka, here it means a sadhaka doesn't consider himself to be superior to others. That I practice more spirituality, or I am more spiritual than others. That holier than thou attitude is not humility. That type of humility is uh, meant here because that leads to some kind of pride. Even a spiritual pride that one is more spiritual than others, it contaminates the mind. So next is modesty, which is which was mentioned there, that adambitvam, that is modesty or unpretentiousness. So that modesty, actually what it does is you are not, uh, you may say you are modest in the sense, modesty and humility almost the same, but you do not even evaluate all your activities, your own activities. Forget expecting praise from others. That is also modesty. You avoid doing that, but even that is why they say you should never judge your spiritual progress. You should not judge. You do go on doing and leave it to God for to judge how much spiritual progress. If you start judging, then that slowly you lose that modesty, and then knowing fully well that all these excellences, the spiritual qualities that you possess, comes from the Lord, comes from the Kshetrajna, Ishvara. So if we claim that it is our own, then it is born out of ignorance, and that leads to the uh, knowledge of Kshetrajna being dimmed. You don't have that intuitive awareness or the knowledge. So all these qualities are to be regularly practiced so that you become one with the Kshetrajna. Now, non-injury, here the example that is given that it is only possible, the highest ahimsa, that's why they say ahimsa paramo dharma, means it is so difficult because non-injury is only possible if one sees the divine in everyone. The one cosmic being you see, then you don't make distinction because how can you hurt yourself? That is the idea. So, for a person who sees the kshetrajna in the kshetra, the changing world, then you are definitely not going to be, you are going to be practicing ahimsa. But there's another quality which is forbearance, which we saw just now. Forbearance, or maybe it can be called arjavam, uprightness, or forbearance. It is it no forbearance is not uprightness is different. Uh, Forbearance is another quality which is known as kshanti here. Kshanti, that is forgiveness. Forbearance is another side of the quality of forgiveness because you forbear, when you forbear, you are actually forgiving. So it's not that you are not affected by the wrong done by others. You may think, how is it possible if somebody harms you? You feel the pinch. But Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. When you bite, when a man accidentally bites his tongue or maybe lips, he accidentally bites. He doesn't knocking out. He doesn't knock out. He doesn't think of knocking out the teeth because it's his own teeth that has hurt his lips. So though they are separate in a way and they have hurt each other or one has hurt the other, still we do not consider it, we forbear it. We say, oh, it's our own mistake. Due to inadvertence, I have just bit my own lip or tongue. So, whom should I blame? It's my own teeth. So, one who seeks this divine relationship with others or tries to see the divine relationship between creatures, different creatures, they practice forbearance. Forbearance is, it's also known as titiksha, but it has to be practiced. So there is a beautiful definition of titiksha or forbearance in Vivek Chudamani where he says Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam chinta vilapa rahitam sa titiksha nigadyate. That means Sri Shankaracharya explains it's not as simple that I just tolerate or it's not tolerance. You tolerate, but then inside the mind there is this feeling of that one day I'll take revenge or something like that. It's not like that. Titiksha means sahanam sarva dukkhanam, all types of physical as well as mental torture you bear quietly. Apratikara means not only do you not react, as you said, you don't knock out your teeth if it accidentally bites your tongue or lips. You don't think because you know it, they are part of your own, they have one whole existence. Now, apratikara purvakam chinta vilapa, but that is at the physical level. You may not react like tit for tat. You may not do it at the physical level, but at the mental level, there should not be chinta or vilapa. Chinta means worry, vilapa means repenting again and again, or maybe if you have some kind of vilapa, that is anger towards the person who has done. Maybe physically you are not reacting, but mentally you are just keeping on thinking of the wrong done to you by others, then it is not titiksha. So, those who follow the Chinta Vilaparep Sa Titiksha, I mean, that is what is Titiksha. So, whoever has done you wrong knowingly or unknowingly, to tolerate that and to forgive him is a sign of Titiksha. Then uprightness, that is Arjavam, comes to him who harmonizes. Uh, Uprightness means, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, make your thought, word, and deed one. Whatever you think, you speak. Whatever you speak, you do. So that is the right conduct. Sri Ramakrishna used to say uprightness is a very important quality. One has to be one in thought, word, and deed. Because then you don't have double standards. Talk something, do something else. So it should all be one. Now, service of the spiritual, I mean, service of the teacher. So that is the word which is used, service of the teacher. Acharya upasanam, service of the teacher. So how does it help? How does it help us to realize the kshetrajna? It is, they say, just as they say, why do you meditate on a holy person? Because if you meditate, all the qualities of that holy person slowly you start imbibing. So also when you serve, when you are in close proximity with your teacher and you try to serve him to the best of your ability, slowly, unconsciously, you imbibe all those qualities. That is why they insisted in Gurukulas that you have to first physically serve your Guru. After that, the Guru gives you the teaching. So so one has to live with the uh, Guru, or one has to be in the holy company of the Guru to, or the teacher, to imbibe his qualities. Now, purity. We spoke about purity. So both bodily purity is of course just one part of it, but purity of the mind is more important. So here it means that. So mental discipline, uh, by avoiding as much as possible anything that uh, disturbs the purity of the mind, that should be avoided. It can be anything. It can be jealousy, it can be ego, or whatever disturbs the purity. Means your mind is calm. The best definition of purity is that you have all the qualities that are mentioned here. Then you say it is, you are a pure person. But normally with purity we just think of physical purity or cleanliness, which uh, which is not the case. So any indulgence in the senses also, because it results in you knowing more of the kshetra rather than kshetrajna, it leads to impurity. And impurity means that thinking of many is impurity, because you use the senses and see this variety. But trying to see the unity in variety is purity. That is how purity is defined. And steadfastness is something, it, unsteady person, one who is not steadfast, is not mindful of his passing away of his time. He doesn't devote a a big portion of his day or time to self culture. So many people think, oh, there are so many births, let me just do whatever I can this time, so that anyway, Gita Sri Krishna promises that whatever you have done, whatever good you have done, whatever spiritual progress that you have done, unlike the wealth that you have accumulated and left behind, the spiritual progress goes from birth to birth. So that is one reason why people don't take spirituality seriously. Now that leads in lack of steadfastness. One is not steadfast in its practice. So they think we'll attain perfection anyway. And all these virtues maybe we can practice later. Let us be practical now. So perseverance and patience is required. So then finally comes the self-control, which is just opposite to self-indulgence. So that is also leads to purity, and ultimately it leads to the realization of the kshetrajna. Now in verse 8, there are other qualities. So of course this is not an exhaustive list. You'll find much more discussion on these qualities in the chapter 14, which we'll discuss later. But here in verse 8, uh, Sri Krishna says, seventh we discussed, eighth, 9, 10, 11. So there are so many qualities you can expect now. The next is Indriyartheshu Vairagyam Anahankara Evacha Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Dosham Anudarshanam. Dukkha Dosham Anudarshanam means Indriya Artheshu. Artheshu means, to Artha means objects. Artha means, Padartha means substance. Padartha means you have a word, it represents a particular substance. But Artha means the sense objects. There are objects. So the dharma, artha, kama, moksha. When we aspire from artha, it doesn't just mean money. Any object, any property that you desire, any object of desire that you wish to possess, All these are sense objects. So indriya artheshu, if you are vairagyam, when I dispassion towards sense objects, anahankara, absence of egoism. The same thing, modesty, but in a different way. Here it is absence of egoism. We'll see the difference. What is difference? Absence of egoism and cha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Dosha anudarshanam means it is a long word. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi. Janma means birth. You see through all the changing phenomena of the universe. One is Janma, those who have Janma will have Mrityu. Jara means old age. Vyadhi means pain. And Dukkha. Dukkha means mental suffering. So, see the defect. Dosha, perception of evil means you should not see evil in general, that is harmful, but it's trying to see evil in birth. What does it mean? Trying to see evil in death. That doesn't mean birth is something evil, but old age, sickness, and pain, they have evil consequences. That is what is meant. So, to have dispassion towards the sense objects and also sickness and pain, just see, try to see the faults because these are going to come. That is how Buddha changed. The whole life of Buddha changed because he saw whatever suffering that he saw outside of himself. He was not allowed to suffer when he was in the palace, or he was always kept happy, he was kept away from suffering. But when he saw this evil in birth, he saw death, he saw old age, he saw sickness, pain, and all these things when he saw for the first time, when he was exposed, it was a shock for him. So that he saw the evil in that and saw that somehow I have to get rid of this misery because these things will come to me today or tomorrow. This all these things, death is not the only thing, birth also is mentioned here because whatever is born has to die. It is not going to be permanent. So evolution is definitely accepted, the theory of evolution. We make so much of the theory of evolution, saying that uh, all these beings from amoeba to the higher and higher creatures, they slowly evolve. No doubt that is the law of nature. In Prakriti, evolution always takes place. So, from lower order of existence, we always, because we find the body is of the lower being is insufficient to express that kshetragna, so it takes up another body. It doesn't suddenly jump to the human body. It takes many bodies and then evolution of the body, at least the body, uh, from plant or maybe viruses and amoeba and bacteria to the highest being, highest body, that is human being, it evolution at the physical level ends there. But there are a lot of stages of mental evolution to be uh, dealt with because just physically evolving into a healthy body is not enough. So man has to perfect or evolve mentally with ethical and spiritual discipline. Therefore, he should not stagnate at the physical plane that I have evolved, I have a wonderful body which is fit, which is healthy, but that's not going to last. That's why they say you have to see this evil in birth. Even after birth, you have to uh, imagine that one day your body is going to die. And there will be old age in between, sickness, pain, and all those things. So, the idea is that from Kshetra, we have to go to the Kshetragna, and that journey you have to see the evil in the transformation. From physical, you have to go evolve your mind. So, how it is to be done? By detachment. That is why it says dispassion towards the object of senses. If you have dispassion, then you will not crave for these things because they are the responsible for janma, mrityu, because of our attachment to the sense objects. Most of our body suffers from all these things, sickness, old age. They'll come naturally, but you need not hasten that process. So when you see the defect in that, you will try to have some kind of dispassion for the objects of the senses because knowing fully well that they will have an impact on these four stages, 4 or 5 stages. You'll get pain. So that is why Buddha's simple philosophy was that there is misery. The misery is because of this change which takes place in human existence. And the reason for this change is desire. So give up desire is the simplest way. He did not believe or he did not want people to meditate on the concept of God or Ishvara and all. His philosophy was simple. It is because of this change, all these uh, changes, it is because of our attachment to the objects that these changes take place. The 4 changes which are mentioned here. And one day it will end with death, with sickness, pain, and old age in between. And but so even birth, according to Buddhism, is a painful thing. So I think this idea of pain has been taken from Sankhya, which is definitely the philosophy of the Gita, whereas the Gita is full of Sankhya philosophy, which ultimately goes to Vedanta. Whereas Buddhism also accepts Sankhya they accept it in a different way. So there also, directly or indirectly, Buddha is talking of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So he's saying Nirvana can be attained only if you give up desires. The reason why you give up desires is that it leads to change, rapid change, because of you crave for the objects of uh, senses. So with that dispassion, but plain just dispassion is not enough. There are some people who hate everything in the world, but they don't replace it with a positive hankering for the spirit or for something which is superior. So what it does, though we hate birth, death, old age, and we have a kind of dispassion, anything in the world we don't like, because according to, if that is only one part of our philosophy, that you hate because it is temporary, you keep on hating. And Buddhism definitely is not a world negating philosophy, though initially it may look like that, because they always say give up desires, give up this, because everything is changeful. So whatever is changeful will give rise to dukkha. So Buddha goes emphasizes even Patanjali's yoga. There is a criticism that it gives so much of importance to dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. But that is a matter of truth. That is what we experience. So Buddha was very honest when he said there is misery and there is a way to end this misery. So he used the same techniques which are given here, which Sankhya also uses. Dukkha doshanu darshanam means trying to see that change leads to misery and misery leads to bondage. So what do? You just be dispassionate. So dispassion is very good, but that is only half of truth. You are dispassionate towards kshetra, but you should be passionate towards kshetrajna. So that desire for nirvana or realizing the spirit within the body should be very intense. So Sri Ramakrishna says, we conclude with the quotation of Sri Ramakrishna. He says, the more the detachment, the only reason why we should be dispassionate is the more detachment or dispassion is there, the more you love God, you grow in devotion to God, and because you can't have both God and mammon at the same time, as it is mentioned in the Bible. Jesus was very clear that you can't have this world and you can't have God at the same time. Mammon is the pleasures of the world. So he says you can't have both. You have to give up slowly, may not be at a time, but slowly when you decrease your passion for, or you develop dispassion for the dispassion for mammon or things of the world, the sense objects, in that proportion your devotion can increase. But if you hold on to that and try to increase your devotion, it's not going to happen. Now we come to the ninth verse. uh, Asakti, that again some qualities are repeated again and again, maybe because Sri Krishna wants to emphasize that. And this particular verse was very dear to Mahatma Gandhi. He said, in fact, his whole philosophy of Gita, he says, and Swami Vivekananda also, maybe he has read Swami Vivekananda a lot. In fact, he says, I've read Swami Vivekananda thoroughly, all his complete works. So, whenever describing Gita, He gave many talks on the Gita. This is a compilation of all the thoughts of Vivekananda, where he is referred to different verses, not all the verses, 700 verses, but the important verses. He comes to the conclusion that the greatest message of the Gita, if there are so many messages, but one greatest message is anasakti, or this which we will be discussing here. So anasakti means detachment or dispassion. So that is why Mahatma Gandhi said the whole of Gita teaches anasakti yoga. So that is the name of the commentary that he gave. He said everywhere you will find somewhere with using different terms, Sri Krishna will say non-attachment, non-attachment, and he himself lived that kind of life. If you see Krishna's uh, whole life, right from childhood, he did a lot of work. He was intensely active, but nowhere did he get attached. Neither to the gopis at the age of 14 he left, and neither to his mother or the childhood days. Once he came here, he forgot the old. Then he went on, he went to Dwaraka, he moved on. So there was no attachment. Even in the Mahabharata war, he was totally detached. So anasakti is one non-attachment, is an important quality, he says, and he practiced it himself. Then an anabhishwanga. Anabhishwanga means anabhishwanga is another quality. Asaktir anabhishwanga. Abhishwanga means identification with the self, the identification of the lower self. So non-identification of the self, here the self doesn't mean the supreme self. It is self with the small s. If there is capital S, it is correct. You cannot, you have to identify with the higher self. But here when he says anavishwanga, that means one should not identify oneself with one's ego, the small jivatma. So you have to just get rid of the ego. That is what it means. Then putradhara grihadishu, or you non-identification with one's own self, that is selfish body, and one's son, wife, home, and all the rest. Grihadishu. Putra dara. Dara means wife. Putra means son. Son, wife, and all the home and everything, all the rest that comes with it. Children, relatives, and all. So non-identification, one with one's own body, too much identification with the body or the jivatma, that ego, and also saying that this is mine. So here, aham and mamash, you will see Shankaracharya always makes the distinction between I and mine, aham and mama. He says it's not enough to get rid of aham because I is one thing, mine is something different. Both are to be given up because you may give up the I, you may be very unselfish, but you may be very selfish when it comes to your relatives. So your unselfishness towards yourself, you may be sacrificing. At the same time, you may be intensely selfish when it comes to your putra dara grihadishu. You and your household. Maybe you will sacrifice, do a lot for them. Even you may not love yourself so much as you do your children, your wife, and everything that you possess. So mamatva is there, but aham is not so much. So Shankaracharya is very clear whenever he comments. He says giving up both aham and mamatva. Mine, I and mine. That is what Sri Ramakrishna again and again, if you see in the gospel in Bengali, he will never say give up this ego. That is one part of it. You may give up the ego, but an ego of what you possess may become stronger. Aham is not there, but mamatva is strong, very strong, and you are attached. That's why to prevent that, putra dara grihadishu. First he says not identification with your self, that is the smaller self or your jivatma. Don't be selfish. There are people who don't even, they are not attached to the son, wife, and home and others, but they're intensely attached. They're selfish, they expect everyone to satisfy their selfish desire. That is another extreme. But here he's saying either that or your attachment to the son, wife, home, and others also should be given up. Nitya cha nityam cha, constant, samachitvam, even-mindedness. So you have to be even-minded when it comes to uh, nitya means actually it is constant, a constant remember, a constant practice of even-mindedness. So even-mindedness vanishes when you think these are mine, these are not mine. So you are not even-minded. But when you meditate on the Kshetra Vinay, you become even-minded, then your children and other children and everybody around you, it doesn't make any difference. They are you samachittattvam. You are even-minded when you look upon the world around you. Ishta anishta upapattishu. To the attainment, see, you are even-minded not only when it comes to aham and mama, my things and all those things. Everything is yours because you don't have that feeling, but it also means ishta anishta. Whatever is desirable or whatever is undesirable, whether it comes, you are even minded. You accept everything. We are even minded when it comes to accepting ishta and anishta. So, in general, now we'll see the meaning of the ninth verse unattachment, non attachment, non identification of the self, also with the son, wife, home, and the like, constant equanimity in the occurrence of both desirable and undesirable. So, inordinate affection for things that are yours. It's not just the wife, children, or the relatives. Here it means all your possessions. So, that gives you a great blow when it passes away. These are temporary things. So, that is why this dukkha comes when you think these are mine and somebody snatches it away from, or nature snatches it away from us. So, such are the evil effects, or you have to see faults, or maybe you have to see the evil in aham and mamatva. So, they are like even mindedness is towards likes and dislikes, very strong likes and dislikes, which we always harbor. Our life is full of likes and dislikes. We like so many things, we dislike so many things and try to avoid it. So Patanjali says he defines them as raga and dvesha. Raga means attachment towards things that you like, and dvesha means dislike or hatred towards things that you don't like. So even-mindedness is towards likes and dislikes. Now, Sri Ramakrishna gives an example, but suppose you have a relative and you are tremendously attached to that. How to get rid of that? He says a person found it very difficult to meditate on God because of his inordinate attachment to a relative, maybe the grandson. So it behold your favor that its relative has come as God come in that form. Means you just Sri Ramakrishna says you have to then think of the Lord, the infinite Lord or the Kshetrajna which is there in that relative. Then slowly the attachment to the Kshetra, which is the physical form, mental form of the relative, will slowly get converted. So, for this, meditation on the Lord is to be practiced. Not only that, when you practice that your relative or your grandson or whoever it is, you try to see the Lord in him, your Ishta in him, then meditation also becomes easy. So both ways, meditation helps you to see this, and also when you start seeing or treating that relative with that attitude, then your mind also easily settles down to meditation. Now we come to the 10th verse. We'll try to finish 10. We have 15 minutes. So 10 and 11 we'll try to finish. He says, now still these are the basic qualities which he covered. Now comes certain other things. Here you'll find Sri Ramakrishna in many examples. He will or many not examples, many teachings you will find. The advice that he gives is nirjan vas, or love for solitude, or here it is put negatively, distaste for the society of people or men. Here it is said men, but it's the same thing, men or women. Jana means people. So he says, first he says, Mai Mai cha ananyena yogena bhaktir abhivyavicharini vivikta desha sevitvam arati jana sansadi, means Mai to me. First you should have complete attachment to me with the yoga of non-separation, ananya yogena, that you feel miserable if you are separated from the Lord even for a time, even for a while. So that is how you meditate on the Lord. That is what our sadhana says, that you always feel the presence of the Lord within. And that when the moment you separate, you feel panicky. So yoga of non-separation. You don't like to separate, not with outer things you can separate. You have to separate. But that will come only if you resort to a solitary place. So this is all about the need for solitude to practice this yoga of non-separation. Yoga of non-separation means the yoga of non-separation from the kshetrajna, not kshetra. So one of the ways is you go, he says, vivikta desha sevitvam, resort to solitary places. Why? It's not just because the Gita says. He says you should have a distaste. Aratihi. Rati means desire to always socialize, always be in the company of people. But arati means quite opposite. Arati jana sansadi, for the society of people. Jana means people. So this intense distaste only will give unswerving devotion, avyabhicharini, to total attachment or devotion to the Lord only can take place if you are detached from uh, or you at least love solitude and you try to go away from the society of a crowd, or you don't socialize. If you socialize, then obviously you cannot be attached to two things at the same time. You either need society, or you either are attached to society, or you are attached to the Lord. You can't have both. As Jesus said, you can't have God and mammon at the same time. So how to practice that? That is why Sri Krishna says, resort to solitary places. Vivikta, desha sevitvam. Sevitvam means go. To go, desha means place. To go to a place which is solitary. Means go to a place where there's no crowd. Indirectly, it means the more socializing you do, the further away you are from God. So initial stages, you will see everyone, including Jesus, Krishna. Even in the life of Krishna, you will find that now and then he used to retire to the forest. Sri Ramakrishna used to always do it. People only see that he is mixing, laughing, dancing with devotees, but that is after realization. But before that, it was so difficult for Hriday, the nephew of Sri Ramakrishna, to know where Sri Ramakrishna is going. He had to search for him many times because he would be lost in meditation. And he was afraid to go to the forest. Even in those days, the Dakshineshwar forest was a dense jungle, and jackals and all sorts of snakes would be there. So Hriday used to, whenever it was time for him to take food and other things, he will find that he is missing. So he'd go very near the jungle. He dared not to go inside and used to shout, Mama, Mama. So Mama used to come. But he was afraid because of other reasons. But Sri Ramakrishna found that place ideal for solitude because he knew people will not frequent that place. So that distaste, Arati Jana Sansadi, is closely connected with devotion, unending, or with the yoga of non-separation from the Lord, which is also known as avyabhicharini bhakti. It is bhakti, but which does not change. It is constant. It constantly goes after the Lord. So that distinguishing between distinguishing factor or that discriminative factor, the ability to discriminate between real and the unreal, between the kshetra and the kshetrajna has to be practiced. So as I said, knowing what kshetra is, changing world, prakriti, and knowing what purusha is, kshetrajna is, the knower of the kshetra, is one thing, but to practice it, you have to go to solitude. Solitude is, this is verse number 10. Earlier there were other methods which we saw. So this is the 10th verse, and in the 11th verse, he will conclude with the other qualities that are necessary. But here, free from disturbance of human society. He has not said trees and plants and go to a solitary place. Obviously, there will be something. Even in solitude, even if you retire to a room or a shrine or a peaceful lake or something, there will be nature there. But they are not disturbing you. They are immersed in their own world. It's only human beings that cause problems and cause all the uh, distraction of the mind. So that's why he says you retire to a place. It doesn't matter whether it's a room or a corner or a deep jungle, but make sure that people don't come there. It's okay if animals or birds, and because they are not bothered in giving you company. They may be there, but they have their own world. They live in their own world. Even the trees, the plants, uh, the flowing river and the lake and everything there, nature is in, there's so much harmony in nature because they are dispassionate. Everyone does his or her own work. In nature, if you see, everything is peaceful because they don't interfere in each other's affairs. Whereas solitude is necessary for that, and solitude in such a place is better than gathering so many people, because the more the number of people, the more there will be quarrels, the more it's only human being who can realize this kshetrajna if he wishes by going into solitude, or he can ruin himself by socializing. So it is the sadhaka's discretion what he wishes to attain. So company of the holy ones may be okay in the initial stage, but then even that in an advanced spiritual stage, uh, maybe solitude is, but many times it so happens that if one is not used to solitude, it can have a negative impact. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says sadhu sangha and nirjan vas. He says both. They are complementary to each other because if you go to a really holy person, he will advise you to keep away from all the influences which lead to socializing. At the same time, the company of these holy people enhances your ability to focus on the kshetrajna, the progressive, the path to perfection which you are trying to. So, Sri Ramakrishna gives a nice example. He sees this phenomena in nature. Now he says, the moth abandons the darkness and rushes to the light of the lamp. You see, it is so much attracted. Our life is like that. We are so much attached to people and socializing. Even if it is destroying us, we rush to that. A moth does that. So that is why they say the 24 gurus of Avaduta, the Bhagavata, it is there, that he learned from the moth, he learned from the ant. So that example Sri Ramakrishna is giving. So the ant would rather give up its life than sever contact with juice. Even so, the devotee, juice in the sense, the essence. You see, the ants, once they start sipping whatever sugar or which they want to carry or which they want honey or anything, even if you try to pull them or remove them, they will get attached to that. It is not attracted by anything else. So that example is giving that it would rather give up its life. You have to sometimes kill the ant if you want to separate it. It will rather hold on to the juice. That means essence. It will hold on to the Lord. So the devotee is ever intent on the Lord and he has no other concern in life. That is Sri Ramakrishna's quote. Now we end with the 5 minutes. We'll quickly finish the last verse. That is 11th verse. As I said, 7th to 11th teach us how different qualities. Which are the different qualities that enable us to truly, intuitively distinguish between Kshetra and Kshetrajna? So this whole yoga, this whole chapter is known as Kshetra Kshetrajna Yoga. So Krishna first, in the first 6 verses, he will show what is Kshetra, what is Kshetrajna, the difference between them. Once you have intellectually understood, he will explain the way to do it, the way to really separate it, not by just an academic understanding or an intellectual understanding of these concepts, but by practicing these qualities, which will lead to that separation. So now the last 11th verse is Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam, that is one word. Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Etad Jnanam iti Proktam. Ajnanam Yadatonyatha. Now he says there are two things, two efforts. One will lead to true knowledge, another will lead to bondage. So you should know there is also a difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna. What leads to bondage will take you towards the Kshetra. What leads to knowledge will lead you away from Kshetra, that is towards Kshetrajna. Atma Jnana, Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam means constancy in self-knowledge. That now here the self doesn't mean the lower self. Here constantly holding on to the higher self. Nityatvam means not once. Once you hold on to it, it vanishes. Again you hold on to it, and then it becomes a constant effort. So that constancy in self-knowledge, tattva jnanartha darshanam, perception of the end of true knowledge. So all the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge that we gain, one has to be very clear in the mind that it is not the end of knowledge. To know a thing, to understand certain concepts, you listen to some YouTube video, you understand, oh yeah, I have understood it. But it's conceptual knowledge. But Artha, Tattva Jnana Artha Darshanam means Tattva Jnana Artha Darshanam means perception of the end of true knowledge. Where will this academic knowledge lead me to? I should not stop with a mere academic knowledge. I want to see where it leads me. What is the ultimate goal of this academic knowledge? Iti Proktam, that has been declared. That has been declared by the Lord. Ajnanam is opposite to this. If you are not able to do it, automatically the only way is bondage and ajnana. So constancy in self-knowledge, holding on to self-knowledge as much as possible through meditation, perception of the end of knowledge of truth. You have understood the knowledge of truth in one way, but trying to reach the end of that, this is declared to be knowledge, and what is opposed to it is ignorance. So he says simple sentimental attachment to this knowledge, to the maker. I have understood this, I am attached to that, and becoming emotional is not enough. It has to be supported by a diligent inquiry into the nature of self. That is why it is saying perception of the end of knowledge. So clinging to something, clinging to the spirit is good. Clinging to the maker, Ishvara and the Ishta. But at the same time, you have to discriminate the nature of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. And not only discriminate, but after having got that theoretical knowledge, try to see what will happen if I reach the end of that knowledge. So all endeavors towards Brahma Vidya, towards knowing of the Kshetrajna is one part, but it has to be attached, or it has to be combined with knowledge also, not just devotion. So all this contribute to the development of the uh, buddhi, true buddhi or divine nature. So all these dispositions, all these efforts, all this vanity, self-esteem, injury, revengefulness, the opposite of that leads to Kshetrajna, knowledge of Kshetrajna, where if you practice the opposite, crookedness, indifference towards the teacher, dirty habits, that is ashaucha, fickleness. So Krishna has not described that, but all the other things. So he says, I am giving a list of so many qualities from from verse 7 to 11. And whatever you do contrary to those good qualities, that is the opposite of that, these are bad qualities, that will result in ignorance. So people, and I'll end with a quote from Sri Ramakrishna, just we have a few minutes. How is it? Sri Ramakrishna says, this is a nice example. This is the beauty of this Gita, that every quote or every verse, it has a saying which is very close to what Sri Ramakrishna has said in the gospel. Somebody must have asked this question. So Sri Ramakrishna is answering. How is it that we are not able to contact Ishvara, who is all pervading? If he is all pervading, we should always be in contact. He says, standing by the side of a pond covered with moss, if you have seen, the pond looks as if it is green. We think it is land or it is covered with some kind of solid, but it is just a layer of thin moss. One feels inclined to think. See what a nice example he is giving. We see this every day, but we don't meditate. Sri Ramakrishna seeing this because in Bengal, if you see, the water is very stagnant, especially in the ponds, not the river. So everywhere you will find, from a distance, it looks as if it is solid land. But they know because it's flat. First thing, it is flat and there are some trees and lotuses growing there inside. That's the only reason we know that there is water below. Otherwise, it looks like a green patch of land from a distance. But the moment you step on it, thinking that there is no water, then you will sink. So, seeing this, one feels inclined to think that there is no water in the pond. Similarly, and then Sri Ramakrishna says you have to push the moss aside to see the water below. If you throw some stones and try to separate it, you will see after a while again all the scum will come and the green, everything, that moss will come, and uh, that patch of water which you could see, clear water, that will vanish. So that is how Maya covers. So Maya has a concealing power. It has to be brushed aside again and again. You have to keep removing the moss before we are blessed with a vision of the all-pervading Ishvara, which is compared to the water. Water is there, but why don't we see the all-pervading Lord? Because the all-pervading Lord, though is there, the moss has covered the water. So our ignorance is covering that knowledge. So you have to again remove, this is Kshetra, this is Kshetrajna, this is pure consciousness, this is Maya. So Maya, Prakriti, all these things. So elaborate discussion on the Kshetra and what is Kshetrajna, how to attain it, all what we discussed till now in one small parable or one small example or simile, Sri Ramakrishna explains what is the result. And that is what uh, Sri Krishna says. They don't grow in wisdom or self-knowledge because all the opposite qualities of what is being described now, they come like this moss, they cover the clear water. And Ishvara is forgotten. Though he is still there, water is still there, doesn't mean water is not there. Though you cannot see it. That is the beautiful example. Then in verse 12, we'll do it in the next class. What will happen if you develop knowledge? We discussed what knowledge, how to get knowledge, and how one will fall into ignorance if one practices the opposite of the qualities that are described in 7th to 11th verse. But what is the gain? I mean, after we do that, what is the experience that we have? So Brahman, the realization of Brahman is defined. So we have to give the goal. Otherwise, why do I do all these things? Practice so many qualities I have to practice. And then I have knowledge. But what is the use? What will that knowledge give me? So that we'll not discuss now. It will be discussed in, first of all, it will be defined what is the goal of knowledge and what it will do to you. So verse 12 is just to, uh, because these things you can hear from Brahmagyanis only or from the Lord. So that's why he's saying, I'm declaring this to you. Know it for certain. This is what will happen if you practice verse 7 to 11 all the qualities and then strive to separate the kshetra and kshetrajna, you will attain immortality. And that I guarantee, that is the definite result of what will happen to you. So we'll conclude. If there are some questions, you can in the chat. Are there any questions? No. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram.